1936, Japan was shaken by a crime so shocking, so disturbing, that it became a legend of love, obsession, and death. Her name was Sada Abe, a woman whose desire turned deadly, and whose story blurred the line between passion and madness. Welcome to the Black Widow Files, where we uncover the darkest, most fascinating true crime stories from around the world. If you love exploring real stories of obsession, betrayal, and mystery, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next chilling tale. Now, let's dive into the tragic and terrifying story of Sada Abe, the woman who loved to death. Sada Abe Sada, May 28, 1905. After 1970 was a Japanese woman who is remembered for erotically asphyxiating her lover, Kichizo Ishida Kichizo, on May 18, 1936, and then cutting off his penis and testicles and carrying them around with her in her handbag. The story became a national sensation in Japan, acquiring mythic overtones, and has since been interpreted by artists, philosophers, novelists, and filmmakers. Family background: Sada Abe was the seventh of 8 children of Shigeyoshi and Katsu Abe, an upper-middle-class family of tatami mat makers in Tokyo's Kondo neighborhood. Only 4 of the Abe children survived to adulthood, and of those, Sada was the youngest. Abe's father, Shigeyoshi Abe, was originally from Chiba Prefecture. He had been adopted into the Abe family to help with the business, which he eventually inherited. Age 52, at the time of Sada's birth, Shigeyoshi Abe was described by police as an honest and upright man who had no conspicuous vices, though some acquaintances reported him to be somewhat self-centered, with a taste for extravagance. Sada's mother, Katsu Abe, likewise had no known legal or moral blemishes on her record. Sada's siblings and father did behave questionably, though. Her brother Shintaro was known as a womanizer, and after his marriage ran away with his parents' money. Sada's sister Teruko was also known to have had several lovers. Her father sent her to work in a brothel, then not an uncommon way to punish female sexual promiscuity in Japan, though he soon bought her back. Teruko's past was not considered a hindrance to marriage for those of the Abe's class at the time, and she soon married. Early life: Sada Abe was born in 1905. Her mother doted on her youngest child and let her do as she wished. She encouraged Abe to take lessons in singing and in playing the shamisen, both activities which, at the time, were more closely associated with geisha and prostitutes than with classical artistic endeavor. Geishas were considered glamorous celebrities, and Abe herself followed the image by skipping school for these lessons and wearing stylish makeup. As family problems over her siblings, sister Teruko and brother Shintaro, became more pressing, Abe was often sent out of the house alone. She soon fell in with a group of similarly independent teenagers. At the age of 15, during one of these outings, she was raped by one of her acquaintances, and even though her parents defended and supported her, she became a difficult teenager. As she became more irresponsible and uncontrollable, her parents sold her to a geisha house in Yokohama in 1922, hoping to find her a place in society with some direction. Toku Abe, Sada's oldest sister, testified that Sada wished to become a geisha. Sada herself, however, claimed that her father made her a geisha as punishment for her promiscuity. Abe's encounter with the geisha world proved frustrating and disappointing. To become a true star among geisha required apprenticeship from childhood with years spent studying arts and music. Abe wound up a low-ranking geisha, in which her main duties were to provide sex. She worked for 5 years in this capacity, and eventually contracted syphilis. Since this meant she would be required to undergo regular examinations, like a legally licensed prostitute, Abe decided to enter that better-paying profession. Early 1930s, Abe began work as a prostitute in Osaka's famous Tobita brothel district, but soon gained a reputation as a troublemaker. She stole money from clients and attempted to leave the brothel several times, but was tracked down by the well-organized legal prostitution system. After 2 years, she eventually succeeded in escaping the licensed prostitution system and began working as a waitress. However, not satisfied with the wages, she was soon working as a prostitute again, though now unlicensed. She began working in Osaka's unlicensed brothels in 1932. Abe's mother died in January 1933, and Abe went to Tokyo to visit her father and her mother's grave. She entered into the prostitution market in Tokyo and became a mistress there for the first time. When her father became seriously ill in January 1934, Abe nursed him for 10 days until his death. In October 1934, Abe was arrested in a police raid on the unlicensed brothel at which she was working. Kinosuke Kasahara, a well-connected friend of the brothel owner, arranged to have the women released. He was attracted to Abe, and finding that she had no debts, and with Abe's agreement, made her his mistress. Kasahara set up a house for Abe on December 20th, 1934, and provided her with money. In his deposition to the police, he remembered, "She was really strong, a real powerful one. Even though I am pretty jaded, she was enough to astound me. She wasn't satisfied unless we did it 2, 3, or 4 times a night. To her, it was unacceptable unless I had my hand on her private parts all night long. At first it was great, but after a couple of weeks I got a little exhausted." When Abe suggested that Kasahara leave his wife to marry her, he refused. She then asked Kasahara to let her take a lover, which he also refused to do. After that, their relationship ended, and to escape him, Abe left for Nagoya. Kasahara ended his testimony with an angry remark about Abe. "She is a slut and a whore, and as what she has done makes clear, she is a woman whom men should fear." Likewise, Abe remembered Kasahara in less than flattering terms, saying, "He didn't love me and treated me like an animal. He was the kind of scum who would then plead with me when I said that we should break up." In Nagoya, in 1935, again intending to leave the sex industry, Abe began working as a maid at a restaurant. She soon became romantically involved with a customer at the restaurant, Goro Omiya, a professor and banker who aspired to become a member of the Diet of Japan. Knowing that the restaurant would not tolerate a maid having sexual relations with clients, and bored with Nagoya, she returned to Tokyo in June. Omiya met Abe in Tokyo, and finding that she had contracted syphilis, paid for her stay in a hot springs resort in Kusatsu from November until January 1936. In January, Omiya suggested that Abe could become financially independent by opening a small restaurant, and recommended that she start work in an apprentice position in such a business. Acquaintance with Kichizo Ishida back in Tokyo, Abe began work as an apprentice at the Yoshidaya on February 1, 1936. The owner of this establishment, Kichizo Ishida, 42 at the time, had worked his way up in business. Starting as an apprentice at an eel restaurant, he had opened the Yoshidaya in Tokyo's Nakano neighborhood in 1920. When Abe joined his restaurant, Ishida was known as a womanizer who did little in the way of running the restaurant, which was managed mostly by his wife. Not long after she began work at Yoshidaya, Ishida began making advances towards Abe. Omiya had never satisfied Abe sexually, and she gave in to Ishida. In mid-April, Ishida and Abe initiated their sexual relationship in the restaurant, to the accompaniment of a romantic ballad sung by one of the restaurant's geishas. On April 23, 1936, Abe and Ishida met for a pre-arranged sexual encounter at a tea house, or machiai, the contemporary equivalent of a love hotel, in the Shibuya neighborhood. Planning only a short fling, the couple remained in bed for 4 days. On the night of April 27, 1936, they moved to another tea house in the distant neighborhood of Futako Tamagawa. Here they continued to drink and have sex, sometimes with the accompaniment of a geisha's singing. They would continue even as maids entered the room to serve sake. They next moved their marathon lovemaking bout to the Ogu neighborhood. Ishida did not return to the restaurant until the morning of May 8, 1936. Of Ishida, Abe later said, "It is hard to say exactly what was so good about Ishida, but it was impossible to say anything bad about his looks, his attitude, his skill as a lover, the way he expressed his feelings. I had never met such a sexy man." After they separated, Abe became agitated and began drinking excessively. She claimed that with Ishida she knew love for the first time in her life, and the thought that Ishida was back with his wife made her jealous. Over a week before the murder, Abe began considering the act. On May 9, 1936, she attended a play in which a geisha attacks her lover with a large knife. After seeing this, Abe decided to threaten Ishida with a knife at their next meeting. On May 11, 1936, she pawned some of her clothing and used the money to buy some sushi and a kitchen knife. Abe later described meeting Ishida that night, I pulled the kitchen knife out of my bag and threatened him as had been done in the play I had seen, saying, "Akichi, you wore that kimono just to please one of your favorite customers. You bastard, I'll kill you for that." Ishida was startled and drew away a little, but he seemed delighted with it all. Abe Sada incident. Ishida and Abe returned to Ogu, where they remained until his death. During their lovemaking this time, Abe put the knife to the base of Ishida's penis and said she would make sure he would never play around with another woman. Ishida laughed at this. 2 nights into this bout of sex, Abe began choking Ishida, and he told her to continue, saying that this increased his pleasure. She had him do it to her as well. On the evening of May 16, 1936, Abe used her obi sash to cut off Ishida's breathing during orgasm, and they both enjoyed it. They repeated this for 2 more hours. Once Abe stopped the strangulation, Ishida's face became distorted and would not return to its normal appearance. Ishida took 30 tablets of a sedative called Calmotin to try to soothe his pain. According to Abe, as Ishida started to doze, he told her, "You'll put the cord around my neck and squeeze it again while I'm sleeping, won't you? If you start to strangle me, don't stop, because it is so painful afterward." Abe commented that she wondered if he had wanted her to kill him, but on reflection decided he must have been joking. About 2 a.m. on the morning of May 18, 1936, as Ishida was asleep, Abe wrapped her sash twice around his neck and strangled him to death. She later told police, "After I had killed Ishida, I felt totally at ease, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders, and I felt a sense of clarity." After lying with Ishida's body for a few hours, she next severed his genitalia with the kitchen knife, wrapped them in a magazine cover, and kept them until her arrest 3 days later. With the blood she wrote Sada, Kichi Futari Kiri, Sada, Kichi together, on Ishida's left thigh, and on a bedsheet. She then carved Ding, Sada, the character for her name, into his left arm. After putting on Ishida's underwear, she left the inn at about 8 a.m., telling the staff not to disturb Ishida. When asked why she had severed Ishida's genitalia, Abe replied, "Because I couldn't take his head or body with me. I wanted to take the part of him that brought back to me the most vivid memories." After leaving the inn, Abe met Goro Omiya. She repeatedly apologized to him, but Omiya, unaware of the murder, assumed that she was apologizing for having taken another lover. Abe's apologies were for the damage to his political career that she knew his association with her was bound to cause. On May 19, 1936, the newspapers picked up the story. Omiya's career was ruined, and Abe's life was under intense public scrutiny from that point onwards. Abe Sada panic. The story immediately became a national sensation, and the ensuing frenzy over her search was called Abe Sada Panic. Police received reports of sightings of Abe from various cities, and one false sighting nearly caused a stampede in the Ginza, resulting in a large traffic jam. In a reference to the recent failed coup in Tokyo, the Nini Roku incident, 2/26 or February 26. The crime was satirically dubbed the Go-Ichi Hachi incident, 5/18 or May 18. On May 19, 1936, Abe went shopping and saw a movie. She stayed in an inn in Shinagawa on May 20th, where she had a massage and drank 3 bottles of beer. She spent the day writing farewell letters to Omiya, a friend, and Ishida. She planned to commit suicide 1 week after the murder and practiced necrophilia. "I felt attached to Ishida's penis and thought that only after taking leave from it quietly could I then die. I unwrapped the paper holding them and gazed at his penis and scrotum. I put his penis in my mouth and even tried to insert it inside me. It didn't work, however, though I kept trying and trying. Then, I decided that I would flee to Osaka, staying with Ishida's penis all the while. In the end, I would jump from a cliff on Mount Tacoma while holding onto his penis." At 4 in the afternoon, police detectives, suspicious of the alias under which Abe had registered, came to her room. "Don't be so formal," she told them. "You're looking for Sada Abe, right? Well, that's me. I am Sada Abe." When the police were not convinced, she displayed Ishida's genitalia as proof. Abe was arrested and interrogated over 8 sessions. The interrogating officer was struck by Abe's demeanor when asked why she had killed Ishida. Immediately she became excited, and her eyes sparkled in a strange way. Her answer was, "I loved him so much, I wanted him all to myself." But since we were not husband and wife, as long as he lived, he could be embraced by other women. I knew that if I killed him, no other woman could ever touch him again. So I killed him. In attempting to explain what distinguished Abe's case from over a dozen other similar cases in Japan, William Johnston suggests that it is this answer which captured the imagination of the nation. She had killed not out of jealousy, but out of love. Mark Schreiber notes that the Sada Abe incident occurred at a time when the Japanese media were preoccupied with extreme political and military troubles, including the Nini Roku incident and a looming full-scale war in China. He suggests that a sensationalistic sex scandal such as this served as a welcome national release from the disturbing events of the time. The incident also struck a chord with the ero guro nonsensu, erotic grotesque nonsense style popular at the time, and the Sada Abe incident came to represent that genre for years to come. When the details of the crime were made public, rumors began to circulate that Ishida's penis was of extraordinary size. However, the police officer who interrogated Abe after her arrest denied this, saying, "Ishida's was just average." Abe told me, "Size doesn't make a man in bed. Technique and his desire to please me were what I liked about Ishida." After her arrest, Ishida's penis and testicles were moved to Tokyo University Medical School's Pathology Museum. They were put on public display soon after the end of World War II, but have since disappeared. Conviction and sentencing. The first day of Abe's trial was November 25, 1936, and by 5 a.m. crowds were already gathering to attend. The judge presiding over the trial admitted to being sexually aroused by some of the details involved in the case, yet made sure that the trial was held with the utmost seriousness. Abe's statement before receiving sentencing began, "The thing I regret most about this incident is that I have come to be misunderstood as some kind of sexual pervert. There had never been a man in my life like Ishida. There were men I liked, and with whom I slept without accepting money, but none made me feel the way I did toward him." On December 21, 1936, Abe was convicted of murder in the second degree and mutilation of a corpse, though the prosecution demanded 10 years, and Abe claimed that she desired the death penalty. She was in fact sentenced to just 6 years in prison. She was confined in Tochigi Women's Penitentiary, where she was prisoner number 11. Abe's sentence was commuted on November 10, 1940. On the occasion of the 2600th anniversary celebrations of the mythical founding of Japan, when Emperor Jimmu came to the throne. She was released exactly 5 years after the murder. On May 17, 1941, the police record of Abe's interrogation and confession became a national bestseller in 1936. Christine L. Moran puts the national fascination with Abe's story within the context of the dokufu, or poison woman stereotype, a transgressive female character type, which had first become popular in Japanese serialized novels and stage works in the 1870s. In the wake of the popular poison woman literature, confessional autobiographies by female criminals had begun appearing in the late 1890s. By the early 1910s, autobiographical writings by criminal women took on an unapologetic tone and sometimes included criticisms of Japan and Japanese society. Kanosuga, who was hanged in 1911 for conspiring to assassinate Emperor Meiji in what was known as the High Treason Incident, wrote openly rebellious essays while in prison. Fumiko Kaneko, who was sentenced to death for plotting to bomb the imperial family, used her notoriety to speak against the imperial system and the racism and paternalism which she said it engendered. Abe's confession, in the years since its appearance, became the most circulated female criminal narrative in Japan. Moran points out that Abe, unlike previous criminal autobiographers, stressed her sexuality and the love she felt for her victim. Later life, upon release from prison, Abe assumed an alias. As the mistress of a serious man she referred to in her memoirs as Y, she moved first to Ibaraki Prefecture and then to Saitama Prefecture. When Abe's true identity became known to Y's friends and family, she broke off their relationship. Wishing to divert public attention from politics and criticism of the occupying authorities, the Yoshida government openly encouraged a 3S policy: sports, screen, and sex. This change from the strict pre-war censorship of materials labeled obscene or immoral helped enable a change in the tone of literature on Abe. Pre-war writings, such as The Psychological Diagnosis of Abe Sada, 1937, depict Abe as an example of the dangers of unbridled female sexuality and as a threat to the patriarchal system. In the post-war era, she was treated as a critic of totalitarianism and a symbol of freedom from oppressive political ideologies. Abe became a popular subject in literature of both high and low quality. The Buraiha writer, Oda Sakunosuke, wrote 2 stories based on Abe, and a June 1949 article noted that Abe had recently tried to clear her name after it had been used in a mountain of erotic books. In 1946, the writer Ango Sakaguchi interviewed Abe, treating her as an authority on both sexuality and freedom. Sakaguchi called Abe a tender, warm figure of salvation for future generations. In 1947, the erotic confessions of Abe Sada became a national bestseller, with over 100,000 copies sold. The book was in the form of an interview with Sada Abe, but was actually based on the police interrogation records. Angry that he had implied that the book was based on interviews he had made with her, Abe sued the author, Ichiro Kimura, for libel and defamation of character. The result of the lawsuit is not known, but it is assumed to have been settled out of court. As a response to this book, Abe wrote her own autobiography, Memoirs of Abe Sada. In contrast to Kimura's depiction of her as a pervert, she stressed her love for Ishida. The first edition of the magazine True Story, Shiwajitsuwa, in January 1948, featured previously unpublished photos of the incident with the headline Ero Guro of the Century, first public release, pictorial of the Abe Sada incident, reflecting the change in tone in writings on Abe. The June 1949 issue of Monthly Reader calls her a heroine of that time, for following her own desires in a time of false morality and oppression. Abe capitalized on her notoriety by sitting for an interview in a popular magazine, and appearing for several years in a traveling stage production called Showa Ichidai Onna, a woman of the Showa period. In 1952, she began working at the Hoshiki Kusui, a working-class pub in Inari-cho, downtown Tokyo. She lived a low-profile life in Tokyo's Shitaya neighborhood for the next 20 years, and her neighborhood restaurant association gave her a Model Employee Award. More than once. During the 1960s, film critic Donald Ritchie visited the Hoshiki Kusui. In his collection of profiles, Japanese portraits, he describes Abe making a dramatic entrance into a boisterous group of drinkers. She would slowly descend a long staircase that led into the middle of the crowd, fixing a haughty gaze on individuals in her audience. The men in the pub would respond by putting their hands over their crotches and shouting out things like, "Hide the knives," and "I'm afraid to go and pee." Abe would slap the banister in anger and stare the crowd into an uncomfortable and complete silence, and only then continue her entrance, chatting and pouring drinks from table to table. Ritchie comments, "She had actually choked a man to death and then cut off his member. There was a consequent frisson when Sada Abe slapped your back." In 1969, Abe appeared in the Sada Abe incident section of director Teruo Ishii's dramatized documentary, History of Bizarre Crimes by Women in the Meiji, Taisho, and Showa Eras, 明治大正昭和卡里奇女犯罪史, Meiji Taisho Showa Ryoki Onna Hanzaishi, and the last known photograph of Abe was taken in August of that year. She disappeared from the public eye for good in 1970. When the film In the Realm of the Senses was being planned in the mid-1970s, director Nagisa Oshima apparently sought out Abe and, after a long search, found her hair shorn, in a Kansai nunnery. Legacy decades. After both the incident and her disappearance, Sada Abe continues to draw public interest. In addition to the documentary in which Abe herself appeared shortly before she disappeared from the public eye, at least 3 successful films have been made based on the story. The 1983 film, Sexy Doll, Abe Sada Sansei, made use of Abe's name in the title. In 1998, a 438-page biography of Abe was published in Japan, and the first full-length book on Abe in English, William Johnston's Geisha, Harlot, Strangler, Star, A Woman's Sex, and Morality in Modern Japan, was published in 2005. Japanese noise musician Merzbow adopted the alias Abe Sada for an early musical project. He released only one record under this name, the 1994 7 Original Body Kingdom Jatgala Abe Sada 1936. In March 2007, a 4-bass noise band from Perth, Western Australia named Abe Sada won a contemporary music grant from the Australian Department of Culture and the Arts to tour Japan in June and July 2007. The Was Sada incident on May 18, 1936. Sada Abe strangled her lover, Kichizo Ishida, to death. After laying with the body for several hours, she took a kitchen knife and severed his genitals. Wrapping them in a magazine cover, she used his blood to write Sada, Kichi Futari Kiri, Sada, Kichi together, on his left thigh and on a bedsheet. She then carved her name on his left arm, got dressed, and walked out of the room in the Tokyo inn where they had been staying. Sada instructed the staff not to disturb Ishida and left the inn. Shortly afterward, she went to see a politically prominent former lover, Goro Amiya, and apologized to him repeatedly. He had no idea what she was talking about, but she was well aware that this career was about to be ruined by the adverse publicity due to her involvement with him. She was right. Born to a well-off Tokyo family in 1905, Sada Abe, or Abe Sada depending on the naming tradition used, was doted on by her mother, who encouraged her to be free-spirited and independent. At the age of 15, she was raped by an acquaintance. While her parents supported her through the investigation that followed, Sada was never the same afterward. As she became more uncontrollable, her father sold her to a geisha house in Yokohama, although family members would later disagree as to why. While Sada maintained that she was being punished for her promiscuous behavior, her sister would state that she had been perfectly willing. Becoming an accomplished geisha was a mark of distinction for Japanese women of the time, and Sada had often expressed her wish to pursue this lifestyle. Whatever ideas Sada about the glamorous life of a geisha, the reality was very different. After contracting syphilis from a client, she turned to prostitution and began working in Osaka's brothel district. Working as a licensed prostitute posed more problems than she was prepared to deal with, and she eventually drifted towards unlicensed prostitution, with all the usual dangers. After both her parents died, she became even more unrestrained. A raid on the brothel where she was working in 1934 led to her becoming the mistress of a well-connected friend of the brothel owner. A string of other lovers followed as she tried to get out of prostitution entirely. In 1936, Sada became an apprentice in a restaurant in an attempt at starting a new life. This was how she met Kichizo Ishida. Despite being the owner of the Yoshidaya restaurant where Sada worked, it was really his wife who ran the business. The 42-year-old Ishida was a frequent womanizer who was bored with his marriage, and it didn't take long for him to notice his free-spirited apprentice. Sada, in turn, despite already being involved with Omiya at the time, didn't hesitate when the handsome Ishida approached her. She would later say that I never met such a sexy man. Their love-making bouts were legendary and often lasted for days. Whatever Ishida's plans, Sada found herself falling in love with him, possibly for the first time in her life. Just being his mistress wasn't enough for her. She wanted to be his wife, and the idea of sharing him another woman infuriated her. Sada grew more despondent as Ishida drew away from her, and she began drinking heavily. Inspired by a play that she had seen featuring a geisha threatening a lover with a knife, Sada bought a large kitchen knife and threatened Ishida with it at their next meeting. Ishida was amused by her threats and took her off to an inn in the Ogu red light district for their next lovemaking marathon. What happened next is mainly based on Sada's testimony. After 2 days of lovemaking, she took the obi off her kimono and began strangling him. He found the erotic asphyxia enjoyable and told he to do it while he was sleeping. On the morning of May 18th, she strangled him to death, whether intentionally or not is open to debate, and would later say that she felt a sense of clarity on realizing that he was dead. After cutting off her lover's genitals, she put on his underwear and left the inn at 8 a.m. The mutilated body was found by a maid some time later, and the hunt for Sada Abe began. There was a nationwide panic over the lurid media, accounts describing the deranged Sada being at large. Reported sightings came in from all over Japan. Goro Omiya got swept up in the media frenzy, and his involvement with Sada thoroughly destroyed his political career. As for Sada herself, she stayed at a nearby inn and reportedly made plans to commit suicide. Acting on a tip, police tracked her down to her hotel room on May 20th, and she gave up immediately. Ishida's severed genitals, still wrapped in the magazine cover, were found in her handbag. News of Sada's capture was reported nationwide and even announced in Japan's national diet. Given the political upheavals of the time, the bizarre sex scandal made for a welcome diversion, and the public ate up every detail of the testimony. that she provided during her interrogation, and the media frenzy was only just beginning. During the 8-session interrogation of Sada Abe, police found her strangely compelling as she talked about killing Kichizo Ishida. Sada was emphatic in saying that, "I loved him so much I wanted him all to myself. But since we were not husband and wife, as long as he lived he could be embraced by other women. I knew that if I killed him no other woman could ever touch him again, so I killed him." Asked why cut off his genitals, she replied, "Because I couldn't take his head or body with me. I wanted to take the part of him that brought back to me the most vivid memories." The public was fascinated with the case. While murders due to jealousy were hardly uncommon, the strange story of the geisha turned harlot who killed out of love mesmerized Japanese society, and you thought the Lorena Bobbitt case was memorable.